let's do a wee bit of review from what we talked about last week. We started talking about the 4 different types of tissue. We have epithelial tissue, which covers and lines stuff. We got connective tissue, which connects stuff. We have muscular tissue, and we have nervous tissue. So we started talking about epithelial tissue. And we had some terminology here. A single layer of cells is a simple. More than one layer of cells is called stratified. Remember that because it's like out into the stratosphere. Speaking of which, does anyone in here, I don't know, if it's a new channel, I don't have it, but I have some shows from it. Apple TV now has a channel. Anybody know? Well, if you have an opportunity, I'm saying this because of stratosphere, they have the most fabulous show, although for the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called. But it's a reimagining of what would have happened in history if the Russians had beat us in the space race, and if they had put a man on the moon first. Really, really dramatic show. It's pretty great. So if you need something to binge, pretty great show. I endorse it. We'll probably be finishing that up today. I got 2 more episodes to go. That's my plan. I'm officially finished my history class. What? Yeah, I'm very excited about that. Whew. Boy, that class was crazy. That final test was 5 questions, and it took me 2 hours and 10 minutes to do it. But it's done, and I can relax for a week and then get back into my fall semester. So stratified is more than one cell. We have layers going to the stratosphere. We had some shapes that we talked about. We have squamous, which means squished, very thin cell, very squishy looking cell. We have cuboidal, which are cube shaped. And we have columnar, which is column shaped. And then we have some special areas where we might have some cells that are keratinized, like our fingernail cells, our horn cells. We might have some cells that are ciliated, meaning they have little hair-like structures. This was our sea anemone. It's like crowd surfing. So those are our special surface specializations. So then we started talking about where might we find each of these different configurations. So the first one here is simple squamous. Simple meaning, so 1 layer, single layer, that's right, just shout it on out. Squamous, squished. This is going to be a very, very thin layer. It's in fact thinner than a single piece of tissue paper. And the reason why we need it to be so thin is because this layer is where we have things like gases and molecules very easily able to pass back and forth through. There's not a whole lot of barrier preventing it from passing back and forth. We talked about some of our specifics like the mesothelium. If you or a loved one suffers from a mesothelioma, you may be entitled to a settlement. This is just a very thin lining of cells in the chest. What is a mesothelioma? What is the suffix oma? It's going to be a tumor. It is a tumor. Endothelium, this is a lining of very simple squished cells in our blood vessels where we have lots of gases being exchanged, carbon dioxide, oxygen. You guys are talking about that right now in the cardiovascular system in med term. We have our simple cuboidal, so a single layer of cube-shaped cells. These are going to be in areas where we have secretion and absorption. Secretion is when we put a product out. Absorption is when we take a product in. So like hormones in the ovaries, liver, kidneys, anywhere that we are making a product and we have to get it out to the body. Or if we're taking in a product that was made somewhere else in the body, that's going to be where this simple cuboidal, it just gives us a little more surface area to help absorb or secrete these, whatever it is that we're making. Simple columnar, this is going to be the greatest of all of the surface areas of this simple single layer of cells. So areas that need to absorb either very large molecules or a lot of molecules, like our GI tract. When you eat that Chipotle burrito and your GI tract breaks it down into its most basic molecular structure, we got to be able to absorb those molecules into the blood and transport them around our bodies. That's where we have this simple columnar, the greater surface area to do that. One of the cells that is classified as a simple columnar is a goblet cell. What did we learn last week that goblet cells make? What kind of liquid? Mucus. Makes mucus. That was when we had our goblet and we were drinking the snot out of our mucus goblet. I think that's where I nearly made Tiana throw up last week.
Yo, don't remind me.
So those are our three simple. Now we go into our stratified, which is more than one layer. These are going to be in areas of the body are stratified squamous, so more than one layer of squished cells. Example of this is going to be where areas are under some sort of wear and tear. Like for example, my skin. My skin is multiple layers of squamous cells. Because as the cells are being produced from underneath, they're pushing the next level up, until eventually I have the last layer, which eventually sheds off. I can also see these in like the membrane of my mouth, where I'm constantly having chemical, like digestive chemicals, as well as mechanical action of chewing on stuff. These cells are constantly being shed, and they're replaced by cells from a different, deeper layer. So these are going to be an example of when you were talking about the cells in MedTerm. Remember how we had the different layers? You had your basal layer, the basement membrane, and you had layers like your stratum lucidum, your stratum germinovativum, your granulosum, your, anyway, you get the idea. And so we have all of these different layers, and then the top layer is going to be shedding. So those are some of the areas that we would see the stratified squamous, more than one layer of squamous cells. Stratified cuboidal, this is more than one layer of cube-shaped cells. This is going to be found in certain ducts, and what a duct is an area in a gland that helps to move stuff out of the gland and into the environment, either inside environment or outside environment. Now the stratified cuboidal, it's important to note, generally we're going to see it in layers of 2. It doesn't matter if it's 2 layers, 10 layers, 100 layers. If it's more than one layer, it's considered stratified. Again, if we're looking at this PowerPoint, everything that's in red is testable material. I've really pared this down for the material that you'll be responsible for the test, and that'll be sometime later this week. Not tomorrow. Give you a break. Finally, we have our stratified columnar, more than one layer of column-shaped cells. Now, dogs and cats, humans, this is very rare. We don't see this configuration. Animals that we do see it is going to be more of our large animals, like our bovine. What's a bovine? It's a cow. That's a cow. Very rare. This is being found in our cows in certain areas of their digestive system. Cows being polygastric. What do I mean by polygastric? Multiple stomachs. And so that's where we're going to see this stratified columnar, more than one layer of column-shaped cells.
It's like the wall between the stomachs.
Yeah, it's making up the stomach wall itself. Of the 3 false stomachs, And then their true stomach acts very similar to our stomach. The way that bovine use nutrients is really pretty fascinating. Do I have any large animal interest in here? Does anyone want to work with cows? Oh my goodness gracious. So cows are pretty gross. They're delicious but disgusting. And basically they eat grass. Problem is that grass doesn't contain any calories. Calories is our method of measuring energy. If I try and go out and just eat grass 3 times a day, every day, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to die. I'm going to probably die. So if a cow weighs several hundreds of pounds more than me, how are they sustaining themselves on something that contains no energy? That's crazy. It's these 3 stomachs and this epithelial configuration. So they have a bacterial colony. Similar to us, we also have bacteria in our guts. But their bacterial colony does something with the grass. And as this grass is going through the chambers and it's getting kind of ground up, and then they regurgitate it, they chew it again, put it back down, what's happening is this grass is fermenting. And if anybody's into any kind of brewing, like home IPA brewing, probably not. What happens when you ferment the hops in beer? Yes, you get alcohol, but you also get glucose. You get sugar. And so as these cows are fermenting this grass, they're producing glucose. Their little bacteria are producing glucose. That glucose then goes to their true stomach, and then they absorb it just like we would from our Chipotle burrito. So it's kind of crazy how they work. All right, so we've got a couple of cells that don't fit into any of the previous 6 categories, either our 3 simple or our 3 stratified. We got this guy, pseudo-stratified. Now, what does the word pseudo mean? False. So he looks like he's more than 1 layer, but he's actually not. He has his nuclei at different levels, and it gives him the look that he is multiple layers, but he's a poser. He doesn't have multiple layers. He just wants people to think he does because it makes him feel special. Generally, these pseudo-stratified are going to be ciliated. Remember, this is going to be those hair-like structures that go like a sea anemone, and they crowd surf stuff. We're going to find that in areas that, like the respiratory tract, where we need to crowd surf mucus, we need to crowd surf foreign invaders. So that's our pseudo-stratified. Pseudo meaning fake, stratified, multiple levels. He looks like he's got multiple levels, but he doesn't really. He's a wannabe. Whatever.
So why is it not just a simple?
That's a great question. So the question for TV Land is, why isn't he just classified as a simple? It's because of the way he looks. His appearance really does make it look like he has multiple layers. And because he's a bit, in my mind, a bit of a drama queen, he's looking for that attention. He wants to think, people think that he's stratified, even though he's really not. And so that's why we give him the title. It's only because of his appearance. Finally, we have an epithelial cell that doesn't fit in anywhere, and it's called a transitional epithelial cell. Transitional means to change. And so this is a cell that's going to have the ability to change its shape pretty dramatically. One area that we would see this transitional epithelium is like in your bladder. When your bladder is empty, its walls are kind of thick. Think of an empty balloon, a balloon with no air in it. The rubber walls are pretty thick, and then you start blowing it up. And what happens to the balloon walls as you blow it up, blow it up, blow it up? They get much thinner. That's exactly what's happening here in your bladder, except it's the cells that are changing their shape and becoming flatter and bigger that give the bladder the ability to stretch. These are important because your kidneys are constantly sending little spurts of urine, and those spurts of urine are accumulating in your bladder so that you're not just, spurting urine down your leg at all times. In fact, I'm willing to bet here, we have all experienced a urine spurt. So whenever you're going to the restroom, you're gonna go do a poop. Oh, and it's gonna be a good one. You got nowhere to be. You got your phone, and it's just you and the poop. And before you poop, you empty your bladder. And your bladder is now empty, and now you start bearing down. There's nothing so satisfying as having a great poop. You start bearing down, and every now and then, as you're doing that abdominal push, you get a little trickle of urine. Well, that's brand new urine. That's urine that your kidneys just sent down. With a little trickle. So that's because of your transitional epithelium. I don't have these little trickles of urine going down my legs all of the time. What is that saying? That urine, peeing your pants is just like having a friendship. Everyone can see it, but only you can feel its warmth. Oh, come on, guys, that was a good one. Peeing your pants and friendship. Everybody can see it, but only you can feel its warmth. All right, let's talk about glands. So we have these very specialized cells that make crap. They just make stuff. Some of the stuff goes into our blood, some of the stuff does not go into our blood. And this is how we classify these glands. The first one is endocrine. Now, what does endo mean? Inside. So endocrine glands are putting their stuff into your blood. And once that stuff gets into your blood, where does it go? Where does blood go? Literally everywhere. It goes everywhere. These glands don't contain something called a duct. Let's define what a duct is. So a duct, similar to your house, your apartment, what have you. You got your air conditioning unit outside, and that air conditioning unit presses and pushes cold air through a pipe. And the pipe has openings all over your house, and then the cold air comes into whatever room you're in. That's exactly what's happening here. I have my gland, I have my bloodstream coming directly to the gland. I do not need to funnel anything through a pipe in order to get it out of the gland. The pipe is known as a duct. In fact, it's called a duct in your own house, ductwork. Endocrine glands do not have this pipe. They don't have this little entrance hallway. They don't need it because the blood comes directly into the gland, picks up what it needs, and then leaves. This is known as a systemic effect, meaning that these glands will produce an effect all over the body. And here we have some examples of glands that deposit stuff directly into the blood. We got our pituitary gland, that's the master gland. He controls every other gland in your body. You got your thyroid, your parathyroid, that controls your how your body uses nutrients. You got your kidneys. Kidneys don't just detoxify stuff, they make hormones too. And we have our adrenal gland towards the kidney. That's why it's called the adrenal gland, because he's this little party hat that sits right on top of the kidney. We have our pancreas. Pancreas is a really interesting gland. He deposits stuff directly into the blood, but he also makes some stuff that goes somewhere other than the blood. And then look at this poor jacked up cat. The ovaries and testicles. I know. Does anyone know what that condition is called?
Hermaphroditism?
Yeah, that's a hermaphrodite, where they have both sex organs. from both male and female, although neither of them work. They're usually sterile. So those are all of our examples of our endocrine glands. No ducts, and they deposit their contents directly into the blood. Then we have some glands that deposit their contents somewhere other than the blood. Doesn't matter where. If it's not going in the blood, it's one of these glands. If it does go in the blood, it's one of the other glands. Exocrine glands are going to be having ducts, meaning that I need to put the secretion into a pipe and then move it wherever it needs to go. These glands are going to be far more localized. Think like, for example, a sweat gland. One sweat gland only affects a tiny little area. You need a lot of sweat glands to affect a tiny little area in order to produce a full body effect. Unlike our endocrine glands, where they're putting their stuff in the blood and it goes everywhere. So these are going to have a very localized effect. Some examples are your salivary glands. You're producing saliva all of the time. Your saliva contains digestive enzymes. Throw out some words like amylase and lipase. Help break down starches. Your scent glands. Give me an example of a scent gland. Really? I'm trying to mime anal gland. Anal gland is a scent gland. They also have glands on the horns. Cats have scent glands around their mouth, so when they come up and they headbutt you, they're not telling you that you love or they love you. They're saying you belong to them. This is mine. This is mine. If you have more than one cat, they'll get into a little head bumping war, where one will bump you and then the other comes and bumps you, and they're just basically having an argument. This is mine. Nope, I said this is mine. Nope, I said this is mine. And they're just scenting you for property. So those are our exocrine glands. Now we have to have an exception to every rule, don't we? These glands have ducts except for one, and that's our goblet cell. The mucus-making cell does not need to have a hallway or an exit way. It looks like an endocrine but functions as an exocrine. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I lose anybody on that? Everybody's cool? Fabulous. There we have our beautiful mucus-producing goblet cell. It does not have ducts, but it does put its stuff outside of the blood, hopefully. You really don't want mucus going into your blood. That would be gross. Can you imagine like taking blood, having it look like a big snot that you pull out of your nose? That would be disgusting. That would be gross. So these goblet cells, we know they secrete mucus, and they do not have a duct. So they function, they look like an endocrine, but they function like an exocrine. They're pretty cool looking. All right, so let's talk about glands for a minute. We get a lot of different glands in our bodies, and they are classified by how do they get the crap out of them. So I have some glands so here's my gland. I have my stuff in the gland, and the gland just kind of has this little contraction and just goes, and the stuff comes out, and the gland remains intact. Then I have a gland where the top part of the cell is released, and that's what transports whatever the gland is making. And then I have a third where the entire cell is released and transports whatever it is I'm making. Merocrine, apocrine, and holocrine. So let me give you some ways to remember this. Way back when, I don't even know if it's a TV show anymore. I don't have real TV anymore. I only do internet TV. I don't have any of the local channels. I'm a snob. There's nothing new on TV, so I just got rid of it. There used to be a show, it was adorable, it was called Meerkat Manor. You guys heard of this show? I know, it was adorable. For those of you that don't know it, it really was. It was the cutest thing you've ever seen in your life. It was done like well, it was a documentary, but what they did was they gave all the meerkats personalities, and there was this one group of meerkats. Does everyone know what I mean by a meerkat? They look kind of like a brown, big, fat ferret, and they come up out of the holes. They kind of stand on their back legs and look at stuff. Well, there was this one group of meerkats, and there's another group of meerkats, and apparently these two groups didn't get along. But meerkats, super passive aggressive. So like when you have the meerkat war, it was just meerkats glaring at each other. That's all they did. They just came out of their hole and they glare at each other and then go back in their hole. Why am I talking about meerkats? All right, so if I'm a meerkat and I come out of my hole, because they have very extensive tunnel underneath ground. So they come out of the hole like a groundhog, and they stand and they look and they leave and they go do stuff and they come back in. Did the hole get destroyed? No, the hole just was the same. There's nothing happened to the hole. It's an entrance and an exit. In this case, we're more concerned with the exit. So if the gland has a little meerkat come out of it and nothing happens to the cells of the gland, I think of it like a meerkat, merocrine. If none of the cells are damaged and the hole is intact, merocrine, meerkat. It's your Austin Powers. Okay. Austin Powers. Really? Yeah, when he's taking her photo, like, you're a meerkat. You're a meerkat. And I'm spent. Anyway, sometimes it's just for me, and that's okay. Apocrine. Apo, the prefix apo, means derived from or separated from. This is the type of gland that releases a top part of the cell. And that top part of the cell leaves the gland and transports whatever it is the gland has created. And then finally we have holocrine. The whole gland, the whole cell is released to transport. I have some pictures, but unfortunately they're not on this PowerPoint because those were some pictures that I purged. So let me see if I have them on here, or if I accidentally closed that. I did accidentally close that. Let me get it real quick. So for my little visual learners, I've got some pictures to show you. All right, so what we have here are the three different classifications. Here is my merocrine. The gland is producing, get it on here, so TV land people. Here, merocrine. The gland is producing whatever it is it's producing, and it is removed from the cell, but the cell itself remains intact. Nothing happens. Our meerkat left and nothing happened. Here I have an apocrine. So here is the functional unit of the cell that is creating whatever it is this gland is creating. And the top part of the cell is going to break off apo, derived from, and that's going to transport our gland secretion. And then here, we got a bunch of cells that are replicating via mitosis. And we push up, we push up, push up. And then here the top layer is going to release its entire contents, sacrificing the whole cell. So Miracrine, yes.
We can't see anything you're drawing. It's stuck like on the editing view.
Oh, boo. Let's try this again. Oh, there we go. All right, so Miracrine, here is the gland. The cell is producing whatever it is it's producing, and that is exiting the cell with no damage done to the cell, just like our meerkat, it coming out of his meerkat hole. Here we have apo, meaning derived or separated from. So here is the cell part, that is the manufacturing. And then the top part of the cell is released, and that's what transports the gland material. Here we have hollow. I think of that because hollow is whole. And this is where we have our cells here dividing by mitosis. And as they go up and up and up, they're the top layer, the whole content of the cell is going to be removed, and the cell itself, bam, bam, sacrificed. So Miracrine, think of your meerkat. Apocrine, think of the prefix apo. Holocrine, whole. So here's my gland cells. This is all the stuff that I'm making. And you can see here Miracrine, I just do a little contraction and it squishes out all of the contents of that gland. Here is my cells making whatever it is. And the top part of the cell. The cell itself is saved, but the top part is released. And that's what sends our gland material out. And then finally here, our holocrine. There's the gland. We have the cells constantly being replaced because the whole top layer of cell, the whole thing, is going to transport that material. Is everybody okay with Miracrine, holocrine, and apocrine? Love it. Discard, thank you. All right, so now that we've classified our glands by where are they putting their stuff? Is it going into the blood? Is it not going into the blood? Endocrine versus exocrine. And we've classified our glands by how are they getting the stuff out? Are they, yes?
So on the last slide, sorry, it said like there was like exocrine glands. There's those three types. Are
Yes.
those three types the same for the endocrine glands also?
So endocrine, if we take a look at, actually, I think I have a pic, hang on. I got a picture. Here's a picture. So my exocrine gland, this is exocrine. You see this little hallway right here? That's a duct. Here is my endocrine gland. I have blood going directly in, picking up a shipment and leaving. So this is what we're talking about. Exocrine, I'm depositing my stuff somewhere other than the blood, and I do have a duct. Endocrine, I'm putting my stuff directly into the blood, and I don't have a duct.
So the cells must
So-
be separated.
Absolutely. So we don't have anything that we need to release in order to get my gland substance out of the gland. The miracrine, apocrine, and holocrine are all examples of this because we're having to have some sort of transport out of the gland. So we've talked about where do they put their stuff. We talked about how do they get their stuff out of the gland. The final classification is going to be, what is it? Is it watery or is it thick mucus? If it's a watery substance like tears, like sweat, we call that serous. Now that's not serious, like why so serious? This is said serous. Serous means very watery. If it is a thick mucus, then we call it just that, mucoid or mucus. So we have 3 distinct ways that we classify glands. Where are they putting their stuff? How are they getting out? What is it? Any other questions, comments, concerns about that? It's just 3 different ways that we're classifying our glands. And that concludes our our epithelial tissue. We have 3 other types of tissue that we need to discuss: connective, muscle, and nervous. So now we're going to move on to our connective tissue, which connects stuff. Connective tissue, we automatically think tendons and ligaments. I showed you a video, not last week, but the week before, of the cadaver hand, and he had dissected out all of the ligaments in the hand, and they're very tight, very, very fibrous strings on the puppet. That's connective tissue. But we also have some tissues that we don't necessarily think of as connected, like adipose. What is adipose tissue? It's a fat. Where do you have adipose tissue? I'm giving you sad face right now. Everywhere. You have fat everywhere. And this fat acts as an energy reserve. It's our storage unit. When you have to have energy and you haven't taken in anything that has energy, we don't want to just drop dead. So our body's able to use the storage unit, break down that energy, and then use it to keep us alive. Unfortunately, not breaking it down fast enough in my case, but it's getting there. I do notice that my scrubs are not nearly as tight as they were 4 weeks ago. So I'm happy about that. So they're a reserve for energy. They also help to protect. Adipose tissue is protection. We get a lot of important stuff down here with no skeletal protection. So we lay down muscle, 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 and then we lay down a lovely layer of adipose to help protect it. And this connective tissue is vascularized. Now somebody tell me what that means, vascularized. Yeah, it has blood supply. It does have blood supply. Our connective tissue does have blood supply. And because it's found everywhere in the body, not just, again, tendons and ligaments, but also adipose, fascia, it's the most abundant tissue in the body. That is a great, hey, let's start writing the test, shall we? True or false? Connective tissue is the most abundant tissue found in the body by weight. That would be true. That would be a great question on your test. And that's pretty much it for the definition of connective tissue. So what sort of things makes up our connective tissue? Because as you saw, the strings in your hand look very different than the fat in your belly. They're both connective tissue. So some of the components, we have the fibers. We have the basement that all these fibers are attached to. And then they're also going to be made of cells. We have cells included in this connective tissue. Some cells are fixed, meaning they don't go anywhere. I think of these cells kind of like, you know, the small town girl living in a lonely world. She catches the midnight train, going anywhere. Really? Really? One? Fair, thank you. All right. So I think of these fixed cells as the, you know, they never go anywhere. They are born in this tiny little town. You know, they marry their high school sweetheart. They know everybody's business. They work at the Dairy Queen. You know the town I'm talking about. Those are our fixed cells. And then we have other cells that are known as the wanderers. And they do just go around your body. They go everywhere. They're just gonna get out of Dodge, go do stuff in the big city. Now I got that stupid song in my head. All right, so the ground substance of our connective tissue. This is where our cells are going to be exchanging nutrients, is in this basement, in this ground substance. This ground substance is also going to vary in thickness, and it's going to help to provide a shock absorbing component. And it's going to be a wall that helps keep out invading foreign invaders. So those are kind of some of the things for this basement membrane. And again, it can vary in thickness depending on what action it's supposed to perform. You know, I've got some areas that don't need to have as much shock absorbing capacity. I've got other areas where I do need it to provide more protection. So the connective tissue in my hands is going to be of a much different thickness than the connective tissue in my abdomen, unfortunately. That's just our ground substance. This is where everything is attached. What dogs are you going over in behavior? Which group? The working group. Tell me an example of a working group dog. Uh-oh. Some of our mastiffs. I love mastiffs. Boy, I wish I had enough room for a mastiff. One of my favorite all-time dogs ever in clinic, ever, was this dog named Yogi. And he was a mastiff. He was a bull mastiff. And we called him Yogurt, his nickname. And he would come in once a week to get a bath. And this is Yogi. Here's your brain break. So you got to imagine, head on him like this. And he looks like a bear. He weighed about 140 pounds. And he's just like, if he had a theme song, it would have been. He just does this plotter. And so his owner was the most fabulous woman ever on the planet. I loved her dearly. And so she would bring him to the clinic and just open the door. She wouldn't even get out of the car. And he'd just plod up the front walkway. He'd open the door and he'd stop at reception and get his cookie. And then he'd walk back to the back and he'd go to his kennel, and God help us if we put someone else in his kennel. Because he'd just stand there and glare at them. And then he'd walk into the kennel, and we called it the Yogi Flop. Because it was just timber, and he'd just fall over and go to sleep. And that was it. That was Yogi's life. We used to dress him up for Halloween. He was the chillest dog ever on the planet. He was amazing. Unfortunately, he passed away because they don't live very long. But this is a dog who we sutured his testicles. He got neutered, and he had the incision open up. Guys, we sutured his testicles with no anesthesia. We just gave him cookies. And as long as we were feeding him cookies, it didn't matter what we were doing to him. I was on the one end feeding him cookies, Doc's on the other end tying his testicles back up. He didn't even care. Yeah, he was an amazing dog. All right, so another fiber of our connective tissue is known as collagenous. So think back to the video that I showed you, the puppet fingers. These are an example of collagenous. They are going to have some stretch. They're going to have, they're constantly being pulled, they're constantly being manipulated. But the amount of stretch they have depends on how many fibers there are. Let me give you a visual, or at least a mental visual. I have here a rubber band. I have one rubber band, and it's very easy for me to stretch it. It is able, I can manipulate this shape pretty dramatically. If I take a whole bunch of rubber bands and put them over my thumb here, I've got now like 20. Suddenly, same rubber band, but now I don't have the same stretch. It takes a lot more effort for me to stretch it. That's what we're talking about with these connective tissues. The more fibers I have, the less stretch I'm going to have. So great is think back to the video that I showed you with the dead hand grasping the tool. I did show you that video, right? Yeah. Those white ribbons that he dissected out, those are fibers. And depending on the number of fibers I have will determine what kind of stretch we're going to have. We were playing dead finger, dead finger, dead finger. Some more fibers of our connective tissue. We have some that are delicate, branched into networks. I think of these like hammocks. I have glands, I have organs that are just randomly suspended in my body. Think of my kidneys. Your kidneys are way higher up than what you think. Usually we're like, oh God, my kidneys hurt. Ooh, I'm down here. No, that's not where your kidneys are. Your kidneys are nestled. I don't even know if I can get my arm up that high. Nestled way up here, up under your rib cage. But they're just suspended there like a chandelier. And so I have these reticular that come together like a mesh, and they form a little hammock, and they help to support the kidney. Because if the kidney is just suspended like a chandelier, it's gonna pull on the blood supply. That's not good because it could tear. So I want to have that support, and so I have this reticular fibers meshed together like a little kidney hammock and hold it up in its proper position. Finally, we have our elastic, and those are exactly what they sound like. They're going to stretch. They're going to have a manipulation of shape. Great example is your vocal cords. All right, are you ready to have your minds blown for a minute? Your vocal cords are two elastic membranes, and they vibrate against each other like this. And depending on how fast and how tight they vibrate against determines the pitch. The faster they vibrate, the higher the pitch. The slower they vibrate, the lower the pitch. Sound is an illusion. There is no such thing as sound, at least not the way that you're thinking of it. There's no such thing as sound. What you are hearing, I know you're like, but Ms. Huff, I hear stuff coming out of your mouth. No, you don't. No, you don't. You hear nothing coming out of my mouth. What is happening is my vocal cords are vibrating against each other. You ever touch a speaker when it's playing music and you can feel the vibration? Same thing here. I'm just making vibrations. Those vibrations are exiting my mouth and they are going everywhere in this room. And they are entering your ear. You have three little bones on the inside of your ear. They're called the malleus, the incus, and the stapes. And the vibrations coming out of my mouth cause these three little bones to click together, just like Morse code. The clicking of those bones is converted from vibration to an electrical impulse. The electrical impulse is sent to my brain for interpretation, and that's what you interpret as sound. Crazier thing is, none of you are hearing me the exact same way. Not a single one of you. Now, I'm not saying you're not interpreting my words the same, but the way that you guys on that side of the room are hearing my voice is very, very different from the way that you guys are hearing my voice. Because it depends on how far the vibration has to travel. It's also why I don't sound the same when I listen to myself on a recording. Oh my God, you ever hear your own voice on a recording? Holy smokes, does it sound anything like you think you sound like in your own head? Here's why. Those vibrations that are reaching your ears are taking a U-turn, coming on back and reaching my own ears, vibrating my own inner ear. But because of the way the vibrations have had to come back, those are very different than direct vibrations out of a recording machine. And that's why I sound different. So we've just answered the age-old question, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound? It does not, because there's no such thing as sound. If there are no three little bones to pick up the vibration, then it makes no sound. The only reason it would make sound is if there was a nerve transmitting and interpreting it as sound. So there you go. It will make a vibration, but it will not make a sound. I thought you guys would be a little more interested in that. Have a little more mind blown. You want to see something cool? All right, so again, your vocal cords. Ugh. Vocal cords are just vibrating together. You have a little trap door that goes over your opening to your windpipe. And it is the breathing of air over these cords that cause them to vibrate. But I have this little trap door called the epiglottis. It does another thing as well. It cups and it helps, kind of like putting my hands around and focalizing the vibration. That's what my epiglottis does. So let me show you. I got kind of a cool video to show you. If I can get all this stuff out of the way. Nope. All right, make sure I'm sharing my sound. All right, you in TV land, do you see the screen that says vocal cords up close while singing?
Yes.
Fabulous. All right, so this is a video of 4 singers. They're gonna have a camera put up through their nose, through their sinuses and down the back of their throat so that we can visualize their vocal cords as they are singing. The vocal cords are gonna be vibrating against each other. And then it's really crazy because whenever you take a breath, they go, it's really weird. You're also gonna see anatomically, there are 2 men, 2 women. The men have physically thicker vocal cords, which means they can't vibrate as fast, which gives them a lower tone. That's why men have a lower voice than women, because women's vocal cords traditionally are much thinner anatomically than men, and they can vibrate much faster. So let me, this is just kind of cool. Make sure you guys can hear it. There it goes, up their nose. Oh, it didn't know it. So we're at the back of the throat, in the larynx. Here's the epiglottis. And here, this here are the vocal cords. Can you guys hear the coughing in TV land? Okay. Then it opens real wide when they take a breath. And those are your elastic cartilage that send vibrations out for interpretation. Pretty cool, right? Those are also going to be a really important landmark when you guys get into your senior class, like surgery and anesthesia. Because the vocal cords, when they're open, that's why when they were closed and they're vibrating, and then when you go and take a breath, they go, and then they vibrate, because that's the opening to the trachea, the windpipe. And I might have to put a tube down that trachea, endotracheal tube. And so I'm going to look for those vocal cords, and that'll help give me a landmark. And if I aim right in between them, I'll get it right down into the windpipe and not the food pipe, because you don't breathe out of your food pipe. Any comments, questions, concerns about any of that? What did you guys think? Kind of cool, even slightly cool?
It's hard to tell that they're vibrating.
Yeah, so there's even a little space in between, and they're vibrating so fast that it's obviously, I can't even make my hand go as fast as they are going. We can feel the tension though. We can do an experiment with our own vocal cords and feel the tension between the two cords. Here's what we can do. On the count of 3, everybody make a really high pitched sound for the count of 5. As high pitch as you can do it. And I want you to really concentrate on what you're feeling in your throat. Are you ready? Don't make me be the only person that does this. No, we all have masks on. Nobody knows. All right, so highest pitch you can make. 1, 2, 3. You can even see that the muscles are intense. Yeah, but none of you did it, so that doesn't help with my experiment. Now, on the count of 3, you do the lowest pitch, and you're gonna feel a difference in the tension of your larynx. Feel the difference? That's what we're talking about, and they're vibrating so fast that we can't even see it. I know, right? What was I about to say? Oh, going back to using them as a landmark. The other thing you got to be really careful of, just give you a tech tip. I give you a little light at the end of your tech tunnel. Got to be really careful because you can damage them. If they slam closed, because sometimes vocal cords, the minute that you get your tube down there, they go, yup, nope, and they close it off. And now we got to tease them open. And you can damage those vocal cords. So you got to be very, very careful when you're teasing them open to get your tube down there. And in fact, have you guys ever heard of the surgical procedure called debarking? It doesn't work. It doesn't work the way that people think that it works. Stop shit for a second. So when we have a debark, technically what it's supposed to do is stop dogs from barking. But honestly, guys, you have a dog, what do? They bark. That's what they're supposed to do. If you don't want a barking dog, guess what? Don't get a dog. So what we have here is the vocal cord. There's one vocal cord. There's the other vocal cord. Vocal cord, vocal cord. Here's the epiglottis. Here's the opening to the trachea. In the debarking, the idea is that I come in here and I cut part of this out. Cut that there. Cut that there. And now I don't get anything vibrating against each other. And here's a funny story. So we had a client, again, one of my all-time favorite clients. I had a lot of favorite clients, but this guy was just a trip. He, his name was Mr. Gillen, Bob Gillen. He was a retired old guy, cute as a button. Oh, he was adorable. And his wife would get super angry at him because he was retired and she just didn't want him around the house. So he'd come to our clinic and just pet dogs. Like if we had animals coming out of anesthesia, he would just sit with them and pet them and make sure they woke up okay and didn't, weren't scared and didn't cry. But he had a dog named Ben, who was a big, oh my goodness, was he like a Great Pyrenees mix. And Ben was a barker. And Mr. Gillen started getting complaints from his neighbors. So Ben would just be outside, bark, 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 bark. If you've ever had a barking dog anywhere near you, you know it will drive you insane. Insane. So he took and he brought Ben in and said, I want you to do the debark. And my doctor said, nope, we don't do that. And so he found some specialist. Now what he thought, he would get the dog debarked and then what would happen? It would be no more noise. It would just, he would open his mouth and no sound would come out. It looks like he's barking, but no sound comes out. Not exactly the way that debarking works. They can still make some sound, but it's altered. And so instead of, I got this poor dog, oh my God, got him debarked, so they lacerated the vocal cords, and now they're just, they don't come together and vibrate properly. But instead of Ben going woof, 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 he would make a sound like this. Ow, 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 ow. And the problem was, I can't do it or I'm gonna hurt my throat. The sound he would make afterwards was louder than the sound he made before. And it was a higher pitch. So just kind of some fun brain breaks on our connective tissue.
What about when singers damage their vocal cords?
Yeah, so if you did the high pitch, you could feel just how strained the vocal cords are going. And if you kept that up for a long time, in fact, okay, we've all been to a concert, you know your favorite band ever on the planet. And you go to their concert, and what do? Oh my God, you scream your head off, and you sing, and at top of your lungs, and I don't care that the people behind me don't want to hear me sing, and I'm there to do my jam, right? And I strain my vocal cords, what happens the next day? I don't got no voice. Now imagine that I strain my vocal cords every single night. Well, just like a callus, right? If you play guitar, you get a callus on your fingertips. It's your body's way of protecting itself. My vocal cords are no different. If my vocal cords are getting strained, my body's going to start thickening them up to help protect them. They're very delicate tissue. But the more that my body thickens them up, the less elastic they are, and the less I can vibrate them against each other. So I lose pitch, I can get what are called nodules, which are just little areas of scar tissue. That's what's happening. And you can do permanent damage. Who is the actress? There's an actress, hang on, accessing. It's Emma Stone. You know how she has kind of that gravelly, low voice. The reason for that is when she was a baby, she had colic and she screamed nonstop, and it permanently affected her vocal cords. There's a bit of trivia about Emma Stone. So you never know what you're gonna learn when you come to anatomy class. Time flies when we are having fun. My goodness, guys, holy smokes. That flew by for me. We are going to be picking it up here, finishing up our connective tissue, moving on to muscular tissue. And you guys have a most wonderful day. I'll see you in TV land tomorrow. Have a most wonderful day.